V3.
Yo, it's This Life with V3, the podcast.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to another podcast, This Life with V3. We are back again, and today we're going to be talking about a very, very, very relevant topic. We're going to be talking about social media and the effects that it has on our mental health. And we're going to be exploring how it affects our mental health. What are some tips and things that we can use when we're looking at social media? And how much time should we really be spending on social media? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And before we get started, I just want to read this scripture in Matthew 6, because a lot of what we see affects everything about us. So, with social media, we're just seeing snapshots of people's lives, and it can cause us sometimes to covet what other people have or want what other people have. It can cause us to feel negative about where we are in life. It could cause us to want to have more money and stuff like that because we see other people like making it and they're driving in their G-Wagon and all kind of other stuff, and you feel inadequate. So Matthew 6, we're going to start with verse 20. It says, "But gather and heap up and store for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust nor worm consume and destroy, and where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Then it says the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is sound, your entire body will be full of light. But if your eye is unsound, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the very light in you, your conscience is darkened, how dense is that darkness? And so, your eye being the lamp of the body, we have to be very careful what we're looking at, what we're consuming through our eye gates, and make sure it's what God wants us to be looking at and consuming. So, we are going to bring in our special guest for today. She's been on the podcast before. She blessed us so tremendously the first time. So, we are going to bring in Courtney S. Johnson. Courtney! She's a licensed professional counselor, and she is going to be talking with us today just about the struggles and mental health challenges that we can face due to social media. So let's get right into it. Courtney, how are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Good, good.
Yes.
We're glad to have you back.
It's
Yes.
back.
Yes, we love you, my friend. We love you. We're going to get in the first question. Get right into it. What challenges do the young people and even older people face with social media?
That is a really good question. I get the question particularly about young people often. And I'll start by saying that one thing that I have realized and kind of had to acknowledge is that our kids, today's kids, are have more. I think they struggle the most with temptation more than we ever did. Because a lot of times, you think about it, they have a lot of kids have phones. I've seen kids as young as 5 and 6 with phones. And all right, I see you shaking your head, Latoya. I don't agree with it neither, but yeah, but I've seen some as young as that, and so they have access at literally at their fingertips, access to all kinds of information, good or bad, all kinds of, and a lot of times, it may, because they're kids, they're not really deciphering. They don't have the ability to decipher what's or discern what's good versus what's bad, what's real versus what's fake, all those things. So I think it can take a toll in that. It gives children, in particular, unrealistic expectations about who they're supposed to be, who the people around them are supposed to be, what their life is supposed to be like, all of those things. And also, I will go so far as to say with some kids, it may get to a point where they may start to view what stuff that's happening on social media as reality more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes with adults, you're kind of seeing the same things, and it become an addiction. I mean, how many times have you watched people walking up the street and they got their phones and they're just doing this, scrolling like this, and it's right in front of them, and you don't even know how they're getting from point A to point B because they're not looking at anything but their phone. But so a lot of times, I think it can be an addiction. I think we can get caught up in the likes. How many likes we have, and what comments are being said about us, what isn't being said about us, and all that. With teenagers, it can also be a dangerous place because for more reasons than one. But one of the things that we're seeing the most is that we're seeing an all-time high in anxiety, depression, and that particular teen age group. You're seeing a lot more suicides are up. A lot more than they ever were. And a lot of that has to do with social media.
Wow.
They're putting in, what they're seeing, what they're taking in, what is being said about them and all that stuff. So a lot of times it has a lot to do with it. I mean, how many times have we heard stories of kids who have killed themselves because of cyberbullying?
Oh, wow. Yep.
Yeah.
That's true. Very true.
That's very, very sad.
Yeah. And if I could also say it from a Christian standpoint, I think that it's very easy for social media to become an idol in our lives. Because if we all know, if you're not, I know y'all are familiar with what an idol is, but if the audience isn't familiar with what an idol is, it's anything that you put ahead of God, anything that you pour into more than you pour into God. Or and more than what you give to God, I should say. And a lot of times that can turn into an idol if you're on it all the time.
Right. You're preaching already.
Yeah.
That is so true. It was funny what you said about the kids as young as 5, because my daughter is already asking me for a phone and she's 7. And I'm like, no, ma'am.
Yeah.
But I mean, what do y'all think? What age is good to even allow your kids to have a phone?
Well,
I don't know how to answer that.
Right.
I would definitely not 7. Like, I just think like below 10 is like a no-go for me. I think like because of all of the things, and the reason I think too the parents are giving them to the kids earlier and earlier is because of what has happened in the schools as far as like with school violence, school shootings and stuff like that. So being able to even track their kids through their phones and seeing where they are, or having their child have access to be able to call them is a very important thing to parents nowadays because of everything that's happening in society. So I think that's why parents have even started giving it to their kids younger and younger, but you can definitely limit their access to what they have on the phone.
Yeah.
Right.
The numbers that they can dial, you understand what I'm saying, what they can look at on their phone. Their phone doesn't have to contain internet access and things like that that can get them in trouble. So I just think you have to be vigilant as a parent. If you are going to give your child a phone, there should be some parameters and limitations on what they can actually do with that phone. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah, I agree too, wholeheartedly. And and I will tell you, unfortunately, that fight of the phone or that will not go away, because my kids are 13 and 10 and they don't have a phone, and they're literally some like the only kids that are that they know of within their friend groups and even in their cousin group, because we've got a lot of cousins that are around their age and we all live close by. And they're like the only cousins that don't have phones. And my husband, I'm a therapist, my husband's a psychiatrist, and we said it before we even had kids that we were not going to give kids, there's no reason why you need a phone if you don't have a job or a car. And so and 10, 13-year-olds don't have a job or a car. But then I was talking to some of other mothers, other parents as well, of some of my some of my daughter's friends from Girl Scouts, and we homeschool, so we really don't have the problem or the worry of the kids have these days with school shootings and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do know, but everybody else in her troop, they attend either a public school or a private school. And they told me that a lot of times the reason why they gave their kids a phone is so that their kids can call them if something like that happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And, and I just thought, and that also kind of reminded me of that Uvalde shooting back in Texas. What was that, last year?
Mm-hmm.
And several of those kids called 911
Right.
for help. And they wouldn't have been able to do that if they didn't have a phone. So that makes sense to me to have, get your child a phone. And I would also agree though, Shelly, that it not be younger than 10 and really middle school age, because that would be, I think the more appropriate, and of course, controlling what's on it, what they have access to, what they don't have access to, and also not train them to look at it as a mode of entertainment.
Yeah.
But just something to use in case of an emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think the phone it's become an idol, if I could say that, because it's like almost the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is grab your phone. Most people set their alarms with their cell phones, and we use like our cell phones pretty much for everything. So if you're not careful, like it can become a stumbling block for you, like just being on it all the time. I was really happy when the phone companies started to come out with the screen time alerts, like when you look at how many hours you've spent on your phone, like per week, like it's astonishing. You're like, oh my God, I was on my phone this much. Like it's hard to believe, but literally your phone is like a computer in your hand. So it can be a thing. But I did notice this with my kids, especially my son. And so I wanted to ask this question to you, Courtney, is what effect does the comparison to others, like when they go on social media, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's Instagram, and they're able to see other people that they feel like are successful or are better than they are at things. What effect does that have on like causing depression and anxiety? Not only for young people, some adults as well.
Well, I think I've seen it more with it. Well, teenagers and adults usually is what you see it with, but and I've seen it more with adults. I mean, sometimes I've kind of, been kind of a victim of it. Like I follow Chrissy Teigen. And she is always living her best life on there. And I'm just like, oh, how does she do that with 4 children? Right. So good. And so, and the camera loves her. But anyway, so it's, you can kind of fall into that. But I think as adults, we all do it too, because we see people, this kind of reminds me of what Chris Rock said in one of his stand-up shows some years ago. He was talking about it with dating, that when you first meet someone, it's not you who's meeting them, it's your representative. And it's usually like the face you want people to see, or the lifestyle, whatever it is that you want to talk to them about or tell them about, that's you, but it's usually not your flaws that you're going to be talking about, right? Or the struggles that you're having or anything like that. And that's kind of what people do on social media. Like they post these pictures of living their best life, not the days where they're like crying and in bed or where their boss yelled at them or something, or their kids aren't acting right and they're stressed out. You're not posting pictures of those things, right?
Yeah.
So you have to remember, I think it's easy for us to forget that these are whatever someone posts online is a carefully tailored narrative of what
Right.
they want you to see. And I think that's what we have to remind kids of. And I think we as adults need to be reminded of that too, because I think we can fall into that too. And I know y'all were asking about some of the emotional stuff that goes into it. I would think with kids, with teens, and I'd say teen girls in particular, that sometimes there might be this unrealistic idea of what they're supposed to look like. You see all these Instagram models and
Yeah.
stuff,
Right.
and all that stuff. So I think you can see some of that, and that can lead to some self-esteem issues. It can lead to eating disorders. It can lead to things of that nature. I think so, but at the end of the day, that may not be as rampant as it used to be. In fact, it's not, because there's a lot of body acceptance culture now
Yeah.
that wasn't around when we were kids.
Right.
So it could really go either or. But I think the trickiest thing is people thinking that their lives have to look like other people's lives on social media. And like I said, people are just showing you the best of their lives. They're not showing you the worst. Some
Right.
people will show you the worst.
Yes.
Like if I can go back to the example of Chrissy Teigen, she had a late miscarriage before this third baby.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, she posted about it while she was still in the hospital and everything.
Holding the baby.
Right, holding the baby and everything, and so not many people do that, but it's rare when you see that. For the most part, people are just showing you how they're having a wonderful time in life, and and we all know that that's not realistic. And you have to, although it's nice to see, it's not what people are living every day.
Right.
Out, and that's okay. and so I think people just kind of have people and kids can have a unrealistic sense of what their life is supposed to be like based on what you see.
Yeah.
So true.
And that can lead to some emotional stuff as well.
Well, Courtney, talking about comparisons and people posting, what they want you to know or assume about their lives, I do want to ask, do you think we post too much, too much of ourselves? And
Yeah,
can
that
you
was my
talk
next question.
about the danger in doing that, because we do see people that just put everything out there, that people don't need to know. And I know sometimes that it could be a way, for people to get attention, to find acceptance in the social media world. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think there is such a thing as too much. When you're talking about posting things on social media, and a lot of people tend to not know where the line in the sand should be.
Yes.
And I guess sometimes people look at that as keeping it real, or throwing it out there, putting it all out there. This is me, hey, all that stuff. But there is such a thing as too much, and I think if it gets to the point where you are pushing the boundaries of others, not considering other people's feelings, then it's too much.
Yeah.
And also, I think at the end of the day that you have to ask yourself why. Why do you feel the need to post all this stuff, this very personal or inappropriate things? I mean, I've seen a lot of people kind of overshare about things. People are like, you didn't really need to know that, but thanks, I guess. Or I've seen people post pictures of themselves where they're scantily clad and have dressed or no clothes at all, or things like that. And I think people have to start by asking themselves, what are they trying to accomplish?
Right.
What is it that they're trying to do? How is this feeding a need? What need is this feeding? In other words, because everyone does something, does things for reasons.
Yeah.
Everyone does everything for a reason. So
Yeah.
there's always a reason. So what is it? What need are you trying to meet
Yeah.
doing this?
Yeah.
And then asking yourself, how can it be better served? Because there have been sometimes when people are posting things, I'm like, I think this is more appropriate to do in a therapist's office than it is on social media,
Yeah.
and that's not, people kind of like to use it sometimes as therapy, and to a certain extent, maybe it can be, especially if it's something you feel like people are going to relate to. You think it might help somebody else. If I could bring the example back about Chrissy Teigen and how she posted that about the late miscarriage, I think that was very brave of her.
Yeah.
Although I think it would have been totally okay for her not to do it. I think the fact that she did it was very brave, because a lot of women do struggle with miscarriages, and a lot of times you don't even know that it happens.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think she was doing that to spread awareness.
Right.
And I think, but sometimes people are sharing things that maybe they just shouldn't share. I've also seen some troubling and cryptic messages on people's Facebook pages, and it sounds like they might be going to hurt themselves, or like they feel like they're going to kill themselves or something like that. And people are checking in and all that. That's not something that needs to be posted.
Yeah.
And then again, you want to ask, what is this? How is this filling a need or meeting a need?
Yeah.
So I think people have to recognize that social media it's fun to post pictures sometimes. It's a place where you can communicate and maybe keep up with people, but it's not necessarily a place where you can work out your issues.
Yes.
Right.
Because you do see that a lot too, when people may have an issue with
Mhm.
someone,
Yeah.
and instead of reaching out to them directly, they'll just put it out there,
Yes.
like a subliminal message, so
I haven't seen a time where that worked out well.
yeah.
People just leave with hurt feelings and anger and all of that stuff. And I will say, well, I know I've gotten caught up in political disagreements on Facebook.
Yes.
I've been guilty of that, but I've been better about it. Recently, I try not to do anything political online, because there's always somebody that's going to
That wants to
challenge you,
engage.
and then all of a sudden you're spending all day going back and forth with this person.
Yes.
And you rarely change their minds. Like, they will never, a lot of times people just won't, especially when it comes to politics, people are either right or left most of the time. And so, it just, and then you leave with hurt feelings or anger or frustration, or you're anxious because after you've already written your last comment, you're waiting to see what the other person's going to say and all of that stuff. And it's just not healthy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a good idea to kind of avoid those as well. Avoid the political discussions, avoid anything that might be emotionally triggering, things like that. And also to maintain certain boundaries. There are certain things that you just don't bring to social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Especially like, if someone's having issues in their relationship or marital problems, I definitely feel like it's like when people are putting that stuff out there, it's like you're inviting people in that don't need to be in certain matters,
Right.
So I totally agree with you. Be intentional, because I ask myself that too with every post, like, why am I posting this? Like, what, because certain times I'm like, everybody already knows what I look like. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, Why am I thinking?
Courtney, okay, so what are some of the tools to give people that may be struggling with self-esteem issues because of social media?
I think if you know that the self-esteem issues are the is a direct cause of being on social media, then distancing yourself from social media would be what you would need to do. And I think it would be, you have to think about what it's okay in this case to put yourself first.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And if that means separating yourself from social media, then that's what you can do. That's what you should do. I mean, I did that a lot in 2020 because it was sometimes you go on social media and you see things that would break your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
And I got to the point I was like, I can't do that. I can't go on Facebook right now because it makes me sad. And so I just stopped going on there, and I didn't, because I had to take care of myself emotionally,
Yeah.
and that's okay for other people. Take a step back. If you need to just remove the app from your phone for a little bit, then do it. If you need to completely take down the account, do it.
Mhm.
If you need to permanently take it down, do it. Whatever it is that you need to do, because if it is affecting your mood and it's affecting how you see yourself and how you feel like people are perceiving you
Mhm.
and the world around you, then it may be something that you may have to step away from, whether it's temporarily, indefinitely, or permanently.
Right.
And
Right.
we all know what our limits are. I mean, we may start off with temporarily, and then we may feel like this feels good. It feels good not to have this in my life, and it may turn to permanently.
Yeah.
So, so it might just, starting with at least a temporary pause may be a good to see, and then also checking in with yourself.
Mhm.
Since the pause, has your mood changed? How has it changed? Has it
Mhm.
gotten better? Has it gotten worse? If it's gotten better, then it's probably safe to say that that's being on social media, or all that exposure to social media may have been the reason behind it.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't, but if your mood doesn't seem to be changing, there might be something else going on. And if that's the case, then it might be a good idea to seek help from a professional.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Very, very, very good stuff. All of these are, we could keep talking about this for like another hour, but we appreciate all of the wisdom and the knowledge that you've given to this topic, Courtney.
Yes.
Like I said, this is your second time on. We enjoy having you on because it's always good to talk to an actual professional about some of the things that we're seeing and coming up against in social
Right.
media is a huge one
Yeah.
Yes.
nowadays, and it affects so many people positively and negatively.
Yeah.
So, like you said, being intentional about what you're doing on social media and making sure that you're there for the right reasons, and also making sure that it doesn't become your first priority or an idol in your life.
Right.
Those are like three key takeaways that I took away from this whole conversation is um, the idol thing is really a major key
Yes.
because for many people it has become an idol, and I know for a lot of school age teenagers and adolescents their whole world is built around what's happening on social media platforms. Like their friends are snapping them different photos, different things, and they're just consuming all these different things. And it's like if somebody says anything about them on social media, their whole world is coming
Right.
apart. So
Yeah.
I thank you so much for being here today. We all thank you. We want to admonish our listeners to please share this podcast with somebody that needs to hear it because there's some really good tips and nuggets of wisdom in here and some real jewels that were dropped here today that people need in their lives. So Courtney,
Yes.
we thank you for
Thank you,
coming
Thank
on
you
Courtney.
guys.
today.
Always a pleasure. I love all three of you.
We love
Love
you.
you.
Wait, I have a heart.
There we go. I'm catching up.
So, listeners, we just want to leave you with one more scripture. We were in Matthew 6 at the start. Now we're in Colossians 3. It says, set your minds and keep them set on what is above, the higher things, not on the things that are on the earth. So, a lot of what we see, everything that we see is one day going to fade away. So, we have to have our priorities in the right place. So make sure that you're setting your mind on God and the things of God, and keep your minds stayed on Him, and He will keep you in perfect peace. We love all of you. We appreciate you. Until the next time, this is This Life with V3, the podcast, and we'll see you next time.